everyone that's joining our live session. This is a session about the secret life of plants and introducing us as those who work with them. This is the first in a series of 5 on lots of kind of hidden aspects of the plants, and we're going to be looking at different ways of looking at elements. So whether that is the Greco-Roman kind of 4 elements, or whether that's the kind of 3 doshas in Ayurvedic. So we've kind of got a nice little series planned for you all. And this is kind of our first introductory one. So, Luciana, do you want to introduce yourself?
I started my path, I would say, in spirituality and working with energy, and also working with people by doing a yoga teacher training. That was back in 2014. I did my training as a yoga teacher, and then I trained as a teacher trainer, let's say. So I also formed some teachers, trained them, and I started that path because of the reason that most people start, studying yoga, also practicing yoga. But I started because I had an injury in my spine. I gave me a lot of pain. And I was like, okay, I need to commit to something, because only when I do aware exercise and conscious exercise, I feel better. Like, not when I go running, or, or when I go to the gym, that doesn't make me really feel better. I need to do some slow and conscious exercise. And that's how I started. And then, like we were talking yesterday with Paul, I was telling him, you start because of how you feel in your body, and then suddenly you start a yoga teacher training, and you go like, okay, it's gonna be good. I'm gonna be more flexible. I'm gonna get stronger. I'm gonna feel better. I'm gonna meditate. And it's not just about that. It's not even just about finding inner peace. It's about the whole world that opens up to you when you start realizing that yoga is a way of life, and not just a practice that you do for an hour on a mat, and then you go back home and you throw it all away, right?
Yeah, there's definitely, like, especially with yoga, that kind of base of holism, like that. I mean, there's quite a lot of Western yoga is all about the exercise part, but because of the holism of yoga, like with the healthy living, healthy eating, that kind of combines. There's this underlying spirituality lifestyle choice of yoga, which I see very reflected in all your kind of interests and your bits and bobs, because you do other things and it's kind of branched you out into other areas, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. So when you start with that, it's like a whole new range of things happens, and mostly when you start teaching, because your students start coming to you with other issues, not just I have a pain in my back and etc., but they have that I suffer from anxiety, I suffer from depression. They come and ask different things, and you find out that you need to get new tools to support these students. Yeah. Even in not just that, but you start feeling like, if you develop your practice, you start feeling things like the environment and how the studio feels like, what energies the people come in with.
Yeah, talking about that yesterday, like this whole, the more you do it, the more you start feeling this kind of more subtle aspects of everything that you do, and how everything seems to just be easily reduced down to energy, feeling, intuition, emotion.
Exactly. And when you just came in and learned yoga, you start going like, okay, how do I deal with this? Like in myself, how do I codify this? How do I understand this and work with this? And how do I help people after that, right? Mm-hmm. So this is how I developed 2 other things from my yoga practice and from my yoga lessons. I started my path as a Reiki master. I did all the levels of Reiki, because a lot of people will benefit a lot more from coming and just relaxing and getting their energies balanced, and then maybe starting the yoga practice, because it depends on what point you are, in what situation you are. Some people come with their body really, really stiff, and hard, and they really struggle more in the yoga class than actually enjoying it. So I found that Reiki was an incredible tool. And then again, you start Reiki and say, okay, I'm going to heal myself, I'm going to heal people, and then again, another big door opens when you start feeling, connecting, transmitting energies, and feeling the energetic bodies of things, of animals, of people, and you can actually relate with these energies. And, well, a lot of understanding. Obviously, your head goes, and you...
that necessary spiritual breakdown of barriers where you're just like, oh God, this is big.
yeah. Mostly with Reiki, that develops the intuition a lot, the vision a lot. And so you go like, okay. And this is why it's also, I always say that it's very important to take all these steps with a teacher or with a master. Because who are you going to talk to this about? You know, when you start having this experience, you go, am I going crazy? What is happening? So you need to talk to the person that started you. And I see constantly that there are a lot of yoga trainings and Reiki trainers that just send you a book and make it about Reiki and start practicing. And then they do like a group session to do the ceremony for everybody. It's like, you really need, if you are really investing yourself in it, you really need to have that human contact, even if it's not in person, you know, even if it's online like this, but just the person that is working with you and with your development.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, it's the same with any new skills, really. It's that personal contact time, especially when it's. I mean, can someone learn to ride a bike from YouTube videos? Probably not as a kid, probably not when they're kind of coming to it. Yes, there's going to be the exceptions, but it's the same with any kind of skill, is that contact time does increase our ability to learn. We learn vicariously. So especially with Reiki, the people here are going to notice an awful lot of similarity between my background and Luciana's. We just kind of do it in two different flavors. So I'm also Reiki trained and also trained up to teacher level. But with that, it's so much imparting things on rather than just like a book learning or it's a skill, that skill gets taught. And just like, old guilds where carpentry or masonry, those things are skills, and it's very hard to show someone how to do it without showing someone how to do it. So yes, I applaud that comment.
Yeah, but I find myself saying this a lot to my students because it's not just to learn faster and to understand things faster. It's just that the person goes through big changes when they embark themselves in a yoga journey or in a Reiki journey. So all the changes that you go through, you need to sort of do a little therapy with them, like I'm experiencing this. What is this? What's happening? So you need somebody who will sort of give you a frame, I would say, until you're obviously ready to move on and to start practicing on your own. But at the beginning, there's a lot of things going on that someone with more experience can also help you with.
So how did you get involved with plants?
Yeah, well, that's the second thing that happened also in the classroom. I like it because everything happened in the yoga classroom for some reason. So we were using all this Oryx sprays and agua florida, which is a recipe of purifying and healing plants. It's like a water that is contains the properties of a lot of healing plants, so like rosemary, sage, myrrh. So you can make these waters with all of these protection plants, and it was absolutely vital to clean the spaces before and after the students were because again, in a yoga class, people might come and think that they are working out their bodies, but there's actually a lot going on behind them. And I even remember, and they will laugh at me because I used to teach like the dynamic type of yoga, so it was really intense. So I remember just saying the exercises and not even hearing anything, but I say, I can hear your thoughts. Stop cursing me. Yeah, stop hating me because I can hear your thoughts, or I know you're in pain, but you're not breathing. You know, and these things that come to you it's information that is there, but that they're not saying. So you can hear how they're breathing. You can hear the use in the breath, because the breath against the prana, the vital energy.
Yeah.
So you can feel how the vital energy is flowing or not. You can feel when they're getting tense and why. So all these things are like little prints that just stay in there, that stay in the classroom. So Reiki for being in the place in Oric sprays and Agua Florida to clean the space. So we were using this a lot, and we, with a colleague of mine that she was already doing aromatherapy, we started producing our own sprays and our own Agua Florida. And then started producing like the basics of the products that we needed for the practice and the things that we were using in the yoga classroom. So that's how I started, right?
Yeah. And then down the little well you went.
Yeah, and this was by necessity. And again, all these necessities that you don't seem to know that you need before you actually get in contact with these therapies, you know?
Yeah.
For that, you go like, oh, what do I need it for? But then when you start using it, you realize the difference that it makes, really.
Yeah. I think it's the same with anything. When you start looking at any kind of specific area, you kind of start noticing the holes that you need to kind of start filling in your own kind of development. It's like, oh, I kind of need to go and do a bit of this to fill in this kind of aspect of what I do. So it's really kind of normal, I think, especially in spiritual practices where you're kind of like, this is the area that I'm missing to kind of make this holistic, to make this a whole experience. To those people that are English speakers in here primarily, I do want to make a point. This is something that I mistake when I initially spoke with Luciana about Agua Florida. That is water of flowers, which is a special recipe, and it's not to be confused, like I did, with Florida water, which is the hoodoo kind of American floor wash. Two very separate things. Sound similar to English ears, they are different.
That was actually very interesting, because I didn't even know that there was like a water endemic from like Florida and in America.
Yeah. It was like a commercial company that adapted an eau de cologne basically recipe with a few other ingredients. With clove was the main one. Clove, I think, lemongrass, and another third ingredient to be kind of like a floor wash and just a general use wash that got adapted by the kind of the hoodoo community into being a spiritual wash. So when we were chatting, it was like, and I think I made a mention of Florida water, and you were like, no, not that, it's water of flowers. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, actually, Agua Florida or flowery water is a very traditional recipe in India, and it's also made, but obviously different plants because of different environments. So it's also made I know that it's made in the north of Argentina, in the Mapuche and that kind of communities. I know that they have a kind of Agua Florida. The one that we always used, since we learned it from the yoga tradition and from our teachers, was the Hindu recipe, which also has a lot of spices and also other plants of protection. So, that was very interesting.
Yeah, and then you got into alchemy.
Yeah, that's. I started making these products, but it was mostly just for the classroom, and we were like giving it to our students and stuff in the yoga salon and in the yoga studio. And then, like my friend started this with me, that we've done aromatherapy and stuff. She said, look what I found. I was studying back then. I was going to college downtown in Buenos Aires, and she said, downtown there's this alchemy course. I don't know if you'd be interested. And I read the essay and the subjects that they were treating, and I was like, oh yes, this is for me. It was fantastic. So I got really lucky to be able to study with this amazing alchemist that is my teacher back in Buenos Aires. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna see. Like I didn't go for like herbalism or phytotherapy, phytotherapy. I went for alchemy. I had a call from that because for some reason I found in alchemy that maybe it's not exactly integrated into phytomedicine or into herbalism. The real mystical aspect that alchemy really brings together. And when I started studying it, I understood it was so similar to yoga that I was impressed. I was like, oh my God, I'm studying the same pattern. And I think a triangle, because it's like three, is the same. It's studying the spirit, the energy, the mind, and the body all together as one.
Yeah.
As well in yoga as in alchemy. But I remember going to alchemy, and since it has its own language and everything, I went to the first class. And for this time, I had already studied yoga and yoga training and etc. for 4 years. And I went there, and I had no idea what he was talking about. No idea. First class of alchemy, I was like, what is this? We were talking about doing an annual like a personal tincture, I got that, but then it was a planetary tincture, and we were talking about harvesting planets, and I was like, what is this?
Yeah, collecting plants in the right hour, doing all this kind of stuff. It's a completely different language and culture, like alchemy is. I mean, yes, it's got a lot of similarities because of that, like what you were saying, it's that tripartite model where it recognizes that plants have a body, a soul, and a spirit. And very similar to yoga, it's kind of like almost taking those raw properties and exalting them, kind of raising them above into a state of perfection, like yoga does. But it is a language of symbolism. It's a language of like
astrology. It was the first time that I encountered astrology too.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just so dense. I mean, I remember kind of looking at some alchemy texts when I started, and it was like, take Diana's tears. What the hell? It's like, oh, okay, I completely understand this is ethanol now. Just add the ethanol. But at the time, it's kind of a big jump into that part.
The water that doesn't make you wet?
Yes.
That doesn't burn.
Yes, the inner fire.
Yeah.
So it's a real metaphorical kind of principle, especially with plants, which if you've come from a different part of working with plants, whether that is kind of kitchen-y, witchy, or whether that is scientific herbalism, it can be very strange to land in the world of esoteric herbalism, which I know we're going to introduce in a bit. With all of its metaphors, with all of these, what I call occult principles and philosophies in the background of it, and kind of getting access to what to do and how to do it can be a little bit tricky.
Well, I think it's actually a lot better if you come from disciplines where you already work. If you already understood and worked with the occult, even if it's not called occult, right? Because when you say occult, you instantaneously think of Wicca and witchery and, well, even alchemy too. So it's more like a Western. When you say occult, it takes you to a Western kind of history. But it's actually the same thing. It's just that the Eastern philosophy it's not hidden. It's not exactly hidden. It's more overt. So But if you come from disciplines like Reiki or yoga, I think it's a lot. You get the drift a lot faster, you know?
Yeah, you're used to working with that subtle.
If you come just from medical herbalism, it just seems like a lot of mad, you know, crazy scientist things. And yeah, it's more difficult to sort of absorb when you're looking for the medical properties of plants.
Yeah, but you're also used to, if you can hear that in the background, that's just my dog going nuts, just ignore it. But you're also more used to the kind of the more subtle energies. You're used to kind of working with those things that you feel, but you can't quite put words to it. And coming into that, working with kind of those esoteric principles makes more sense. I'm going to define two words that we've been just using willy-nilly, just for people that aren't aware. So occult is just like from like meaning hidden or shrouded or secret. So when we kind of are talking about occult, we're kind of doing it very in a kind of talking about hidden principles and secret principles that were taught through generations. We're not necessarily talking about Satanism and sacrificing goats. Good. So that's one. The other term that I tend to use is esoteric, and esoteric is basically the same, those kind of hidden inner principles. So I tend to refer a lot to esoteric herbalism, talking about things that aren't medical and physical, but are more hidden behind the plants, and that's more kind of the elements. And I know that some of this series we're going to talk about occult herbalism, and that is hidden principles that lay behind the plant that you kind of need to be taught by part of that tradition.
Exactly. Yeah. I will say that the words occult and esoteric are what it's not what you see at first. So the first thing that you will see when you get, even not just a plant, but a person, whatever, the first thing you're going to see is, okay, the properties of the plant. Like if I take a chamomile, it's going to be good for my stomach. So that's not occult, right? But the occult life of plants, which is what we wanted to talk in this section, is it's something else. It's related with the sort of magical aspect of the plants, which is the relationship that you can build with other beings, not just with plants. We choose plants because we love plants, but obviously I don't just choose plants. I actually work with people because I know that it's the same. Yeah. You meet somebody and the overt thing, the most obvious thing is their personality, but then when you work from the occult or the esoteric aspect, what you are looking for in that person is the flame that ignites inside of them, right? Their soul, that thing that no matter what the person says or does, there's something that shines inside of the person. And when you work therapeutically with a person, you want to make that light grow. Yeah. You know, you don't want to change their personalities or tell them that they should change partners. You don't care about all the external let's say, paraphernalia of the person, but you want to sort of make that flame bigger. Like, yeah.
And I think that's a good illustration, that kind of being in front of someone in a therapeutic sense. You know, you don't want, like you said, don't want to change their personality. You know, they can be a fiery personality, but that doesn't necessarily mean it should dictate how that person is in every single situation. And therapy is about kind of giving that person freedom of expression that is sometimes beyond a person that's going into therapy's possibility. And it's similar to plants. You know, sometimes we kind of go, chamomile is soothing. But it's more than just soothing. There's more to it. We're kind of not allowing that plant to have the freedom of expression that it can have if we don't make those judges. Just like, you know, with a therapy patient, we could say, oh, she's got a fiery personality, or we could just say that she's aggressive. You know, it's that kind of assessment.
Yeah, and I think that looks sort of responds to a utilitarian sort of thing where this plant works for this.
Yeah.
This person is good for this, so they should do this. You know, the horoscope, I don't know, they're a Virgo, so they should be really neat and everything should be in control in their lives, and that's how they have to be. You know, so we try to respond not to that, and not to put herbs in a utilitarian aspect. Like, I'm going to use this plant for healing, but I'm going to explore this plant. I think alchemy has this curiosity about it when I want to explore. And I think this is how our conversation started when we talked about the seeker, the fish of the seeker, which is actually you want to see through the veil.
Yeah. So there was this image that when we kind of talked about kind of starting these lives, and I'll talk a little bit how we met in a bit, was that I kind of made reference to this old woodcut that has a kind of a philosopher peeking his head through what looks like the atmosphere of the earth to see the stars. And it's the kind of this idea of seeking truth and slowly transcending the kind of the everyday world to see what lies beyond it. And we kind of refer to it as kind of the image of the seeker, because it is that seeking. And that's kind of what we wanted to do with these. There you go. This is a tarot card version of it that was done by Usi, which is just a beautiful tarot deck. It's called the Pagan Otherworlds deck. But that's exactly what we wanted to do with plants, was help you guys poke your head out and kind of go, oh, this is what it could be like if I work with plants in a different way. So that's kind of our aim for the next 5 other sessions. So hold us to task and let us know if it's helping.
I will be able to talk about alchemy for like a long time. You know, I've studied 2 years, and then I started just to wrap up with me so I can ask you experience. Stop talking.
Oh, bless you. Never stop talking.
It's true. And then I, obviously when I started with alchemy, I developed, I developed my line of cosmetics and natural cosmetics products through this curiosity for like, okay, I can make mother tinctures, I can relate with plants, but what else can I do with plants? And since I was already doing some sort of energetic aromatherapy products, I said, okay, let's go and feel the skin with this too, with this kind of idea. So I created Medicinae Siderum, which is, maybe I'll write it in the comments. Medicinae Siderum, well, the story is for another chapter, because the name means the medicine of the stars. And it's actually, that's the idea, like channeling the medicine that the earth and the planets channel through the plants to make them into skincare. And we also teach courses, and we always talk about this. We talk about watching the skin and watching ourselves, looking at ourselves as holistic beings, where our skin is not just something that I put something I wanted to feel. Your skin is the organ that is expressing everything that is happening inside of you, and also how you react to everything that is happening outside of you. So it's the limit between the inner and the outer world. So it's very, very interesting, very, very deep. And so we created this space to work with plants in an alchemy way, in an alchemical way. And obviously this led me to want to study more about health and know more, because you're obviously now working with people's skin and with people's health. So then the last thing I think I studied is Ayurveda, because it also, and I found it funny when you told me, you seem like studying things that are very holistic in itself, like 3 systems that are huge, like yoga, alchemy, and Ayurveda, with only one of them, you get to see everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're beautifully kind of, they are holistic in and of itself. They reference everything, but at the same time their focus is slightly different. So like yoga, the focus is on the body, but it recognizes everything else and combines everything else. And then with alchemy, it's more about kind of the well, for you guys it's products and stuff like that. So it's more spiritual, but it's also got a different focus in that kind of tripartite model, which I find fascinating. So
Yeah, I would say it's an approach, but again, one is from the Eastern culture and the other from the Western. Well, alchemy is we don't really know, but let's say that the alchemy that we study is maybe more Western. But then Ayurveda seems to be the one that sort of pulls them together, because you got the study of the plants and the moods and the biotypes and the body.
Yeah.
So it teaches you, Ayurveda teaches you how to incorporate the plants and the herbal medicine to your daily life, to your food, how, and this is very related with the elements, which is the topic that we're going to we're going to be talking about the elements and how these elements are also in the body, as well as in the plants, as well as in the matter. So I think Ayurveda is a good way to sort of make that medicinal aspect that combines the body and the herbs. Yeah,
it's great. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's been my journey so far. I've recently started with tarot, and I think that's how we met, because we met through the Tarot Association of the British Isles.
Yeah, big shout out to them.
Yeah.
If you don't know them, they are on Instagram. If you look at Tarot Association of the British Isles, all one word, all lower caps, no spacing, they're there. But yeah, big Tarot Association that both of us are members. I've been a member since December. I don't know when you joined.
Oh, me too. December last year.
Yeah, there you go. So we joined at the same time. Fated.
Wow.
And yeah, you kind of gave a big shout out of wanting to do these lives. As like, I'm kind of interested. That sounds like fun.
Exactly. And so I got into tarot, and I joined the association, and then I met Paul, and well, let's tell us about your experience, your journey.
Yeah. So I'm
start?
So I'm Paul of Modern Witchery. I am Modern Witchery on Instagram, so at modern _witchery. I also have started a YouTube channel out of crazy madness. So I am now a YouTuber officially, living the millennial dream. So you can find that at Let's Talk Tarot. Where I kind of do a load of tarot educational videos and unboxings. I've got a real big unboxing going on tomorrow of a fantastic deck. So I do that. How did I get started? Well, so I kind of come from the other side of the park. So obviously from my Instagram kind of name, you'll recognize that I'm kind of more into the witchcraft and paganism aspects. And that's kind of how I got started with everything. It opened doors to everything. So I kind of started with tarot. Well, I kind of started with herbalism as a kid, kind of going around nature reserves and being kind of growing up in the country. I'm in Oxfordshire, and just kind of loving plants and having an affinity of being able to name them and understand kind of a little bit about them. And it was a bit of an early learning curve. So I had this passion. I kind of started getting involved in kind of paganism, probably in my early teens, with kind of doing spells and bits and bobs as kind of young pagans do. And then started really kind of getting formally involved with the pagan scene in my mid-teens, about 14, 15, when I started joining open pagan groups in the area, where we did open rituals at night with bonfires, and it was all kind of very communal, and everyone shared food and made soup and passed around recipes, and it was just such a wonderful community that was religious, but spiritual, and it was about people expressing themselves, which was just a wonderful community to be in, especially as a young man. There is not a lot of young men that find that openness to express themselves.
I was actually interested in asking that because, well, you have noticed that I'm not a native English speaker, because I am from Argentina, for those of you who don't know me. And it doesn't seem to be so much of a culture like a Wiccan or pagan culture in Argentina. So I feel like it's very much from this, area.
Yeah.
I'm not saying exclusively, but I imagine that as a teenage as a teenager, it will be, I don't know, I see a lot of teenagers from here that are a lot gothic, and they get that sort of vibe, so it's more a thing from the Coast. So as a teenager, you're always going through that dark phase, and but you can find something to do with it in here, which I find is interesting. Instead of my country is maybe just like about dressing up and that's it,
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an awful lot more of that kind of alternative lifestyle in the UK. So I've been very, very kind of lucky, really. I mean, I know that I think kind of Argentina and Spain have a kind of a very new age wave like that's kind of interested in that kind of almost 1960s, 1970s. That's not supposed to be kind of some sort of value judgment, but that kind of holistic healing, Reiki's, like spiritual traditions, that kind of a mediumship and that kind of aspect. It's still tied into Christianity more or less, but it's still quite So I kind of got involved with that as a teenager. At the same time, I was kind of learning tarot at the age of 14 from like my mum started me off. I think it was kind of to persuade me away from the witchcraft, but it didn't quite work. It just became another tool. So I kind of then went up to big, scary London for university. And I got involved with the pagan scene there because that was my fans, that was my friends, and that was kind of my clan, I suppose. So it was kind of good to just replicate it in London. The London scene's a lot different from the countryside scene, so I found the kind of the pub moots a little bit difficult and not to my taste. But I did kind of find home at the esoteric and the occult shops, of which there was the astrology shop, Atlantis bookshop, definitely, Watkins bookshop, and the infamous Treadwell's bookshop. So I got involved there, kind of got on the scene, started doing.
When I get there, I need to visit those when I visit London.
I will take you on a tour. We will do the occult bookshop tour and end up with like lovely food at the Hare Krishna's cafe and stuff like that.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, definitely do it. We will plan that in for the summer months. So I got involved at the bookshop. I set up, because of my kind of passion with herbs that had been growing up to that point, I set up a company called Woodmoss, which produced historical herbs and incenses and those kind of recipes from everything from ancient Egypt all the way through the occult grimoire tradition, and as well as kind of some more fragrancy stuff like the oldest colognes and things like that, which is why I'm a bit of a herbal nerd. I spent a lot of years in libraries looking up recipes. So I did that, and then I started teaching herbalism for beginners. So I did, how to make incenses, how to make potions, how to make tinctures, how to make those kind of things. And then I started doing some advanced workshops that were based on very small areas of herbalism and developing those. So some of it was alchemical, some of it was planetary, elemental, and those kind of deeper aspects of herbalism to get people more fully down those steps down the corridor into herbalism where they'll never leave. So I did those. I started training with a coven when I was in London for a good few years, and then I eventually went off to run my own coven for a good number of years, about 6-7 years. And then I am now, luckily enough, just one of those wonderful people that go into other people's covens, help out, teach a little bit, and support them and go, you're doing great stuff, and run off.
I can tell.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my whistle-stop tour, but there's obviously lots of little side bits that I've been engineering at the kind of the same time. So, we spoke about yoga. I was kind of around the Sivananda yoga studio in London for a good many years. So that kind of more spiritual form of yoga with meditation and chanting. And we spoke about Reiki, which I did when I was a teenager again, like from about the age of 16, and then finally training as a teacher when I was 19.
Have you took patients and stuff?
Yeah, I used to treat patients. I used to do like terminal patients quite a bit from hospitals.
That's experience.
Yeah, it's quite life affirming in a way. It's quite wonderful, but yeah, obviously it's quite a heavy burden. So I did that for a number of years, and then I also taught that for about 4 or 5 years, in a kind of a very traditional Japanese style, with lots of meditation.
Yeah.
So I've kind of done that as well. And yeah, the next phase is obviously the modern witchery stuff, which is the YouTube channel. Thank you very much, Alexander K. Johansson, who's just posted a link to it. And that's kind of what I'm doing at the moment. It's kind of pushing and helping people to kind of get involved in tarot and do those kind of aspects. So yeah, that's a little bit brief history and an overview. So I've been doing plant stuff for donkey's years in different capacities.
And tarot is the thing you did for the longest, like since you were 14.
Yeah, well, other than like generic paganism and writing spells, that's probably the longest. But yeah, I've been now reading tarot for over 2 decades, which is scary. It's like one of those, which is why I joined Tabby. Yeah, because like last year I saw Tabby as this thing of excellence. That was resting on a pedestal. Like, I can't join Tabby, I'm not experienced or not good enough. I'm just like a fun reader. And it kind of hit me and struck me last year that I'd not just been doing tarot for 2 decades, but I'd been taught by about 3 different teachers over those years.
Right.
And could read pretty well. And I did some professional stuff and did some events. So what was holding me back? So hence why I joined Tabby in December, and then run into you. And then we had that first chat where we're like, me too.
And we spoke for like 3 hours and didn't even realize.
Yeah, which is kind of a good sign of these sessions, is that they're going to probably be quite chatty, a little bit informal. We will probably go off on tangents because that's just the kind of excited, bubbly people we are.
Yeah, and also it's this thing that we were talking about, curiosity. And this is also what happens when you go into a path with all this curiosity. You forget how many years you've been doing it, and how many years passed, and all the courses that you take, and all the teachers that you had. You're just looking for that, following that curiosity, I believe.
Yeah. And, similarly to kind of how you kind of got it started, like those plants were the first things for me, and then I kind of had to just fill in the gaps with other things. So, there was definitely this energy about plants and this kind of subtle, not the physical aspects, which I was kind of feeling but I couldn't really grapple with, which is why I went into doing Reiki and looking at Reiki, was to get better at manipulating and using those spiritual energies. And then I discovered alchemy, and it was this perfect marriage where we were not just making a tincture, like this is a tincture, but we were looking at how we can make the best tincture using all these kind of elements, this kind of tripartite model of mind, body and spirit, and purifying it up to perfection. So for me, it was like everything stemmed out of this plant stuff, and it just it takes you down this little path, doesn't it? Like one step at a time, and you're like, I'm going to go and explore that for a few months.
Yeah. So for you, it was like plant stuff. For me, it was all this spiritual stuff. I went into that tangent. So for me, it was all this spiritual stuff, all this energetic stuff. That was the link between the things that I've studied. But the big question is, so what we're doing now, as you say, you are doing your, it's like a tarot training really, because a lot of videos about different decks and talking about the arcana and on your YouTube channel. And then, sorry, this is what happens.
Your house is setting alight, quick, kill it.
Look at that.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, you were getting too passionate about what you were talking about just then.
It went too tiring.
Yeah.
And well, what I currently do, which is what I enjoy the most, is teaching natural cosmetics. And I also enjoy treating, well, I'm doing a treatment. It's like an alchemical treatment where it's a holistic alchemical treatment where I can treat a person for their different, they come with different ingredients. Well, I'm doing these personalized sessions that are like an alchemical holistic session where we address different inquiries that people come with. And I am also starting to do this verbally in my alchemy course. So the idea of the alchemy course, I wanted to reproduce what I went through when I did my alchemy course, which was an actual process of transformation. So it's also a therapeutic process. So the invitation is for people to come and leave the actual transformation, which is what alchemy means. You know, it's not just about making medicines. It's actually going through a personalized but yet verbal experience of growth and transformation. Yeah. So those are the things. I'm not particularly teaching yoga at the moment, but I use it as part of most treatments with people. But I think I've chosen the path of alchemy for personalized and group sessions.
Great, yeah, and in terms of where people can find me, yes, it's mostly the YouTube channel. I do offer readings. You can check that out in my bio if you're interested, and drop me a message. But the majority of it is the YouTube at the moment, which will be branching out into a lot of other things. So that at the moment, yeah, you mentioned that there's a kind of a major arcana training series, and I've got some unboxings going on, and this month I'm going to be starting doing astrology-based readings for different star signs, which is quite exciting, with my own specialized spread, which took a kind of a month to develop. So big tick off of that job list.
And I can tell that Paul is a really organized man, and he has his things planned out, and he does everything methodically.
Lists, obsessed with them.
So obviously his content is really thought out and prepared.
Yeah. If you're going to do something, do it well. It's what me and Luciana basically personify together. Like, we won't just do something for a little bit of fun, but we'll look for a course or something to do it in, and we'll do it at this level. So Luciana could have just done yoga, but no, she was going to go become a trainer and be a teacher. You could just look at a couple of alchemy books. No, not enough. Go and find a mentor, learn alchemy from scratch, and start a company in it. So that's kind of something we have in common, that kind of wanting to do things at the top level.
Going all the way, yeah. All or nothing. So yeah, and I think it's also the goal, right? So with these sessions, we've also been planning this for like 2 weeks now, and we were talking about that the goal of this is obviously to help you or to share with you the way of lifting that veil to see the occult in plants and how you can incorporate those energies and that magic, that plant magic in your life in a simple way, in everyday way, right? Yeah,
exactly. And you know, the interesting thing is we've been talking a lot about the holism, that starting on one thing and then ending up like doing loads of different things. And similar to this, we are using herbalism, and we are talking about occult herbalism, but through that we're going to be talking about imbalances in your own body, how to kind of recognize that, what an imbalance can mean, how you can treat that in a much more holistic way. So yeah, we're talking about occult properties of herbs and esoteric properties of herbs and those theories and ideas, but it's going to be very, very practical. We're going to be looking a lot more at those kind of how to apply it in your life. You know, if you've got a jar of pepper in the kitchen, then you can use some of what we're talking about on your food, in your diet, in, you know, your day-to-day lives.
Exactly. And I don't know how much time we have. I think we have some time still.
I think we've got probably about 10 minutes, is my kind of guess, because we started a little bit late and then had a few issues.
Yeah.
So I think we've got about, around about the 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I will say, let's share a little bit about what we're talking about when we talk about the occult herbalism and the magic properties of plants.
Yeah.
How did you leave that? How did you experience that?
So when I used to work with plants, I started noticing more and more that there were just more things that weren't listed. And you were mentioning that kind of list thing of like, this herb is for this reason and this herb is for that reason. And that for me felt quite limiting. Like when you were using a plant, you could recognize there was just more to it than those lists. Which is kind of how I kind of got involved. And there's an awful lot at the moment about this kind of plant spirit work of recognizing that plants have their own secret hidden lives and their secret hidden properties that aren't always completely revealed. And the best way to learn those is to approach and talk with a plant. But there are patterns and blueprints almost in like occult law or esoteric law or philosophical law about how you can start to access those and how you can start learning some of those in order to kind of start those conversations off. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. I think alchemy also works like that. So the lab experiences that we go through is to see the processes through which the plant goes. And at the same time, there's something that my teacher always used to tell us is that what happens in your lab is a reflection of what's happening in you. So if you have a big fire in what you're doing, suddenly everything explodes and burns everything, you have to sort of start thinking what's happening with your inner fire.
Yeah.
You have a flood. I always used to have floods in my lab. So it was water. Yeah.
Telling.
These things happen by experience, and you have to see them. Because if you don't it's
referenced in an awful lot of different cultures. Like, if you go into a dojo when you're doing martial arts, another bit of my background, you're told to kind of lay out your shoes very orderly because it's a reflection of your mind. And, there is certainly that aspect of what happens in the external world near us is kind of like a reflection of our internal world. And it's beautifully illustrated in alchemy by that symbolism of what's going on in that vial is going in our vial, like our container. And by watching what's happening with that, we learn about what's going on with us in terms of processes. So there's nothing that we're ever detached from. And I think that's science, people, because obviously that observer reactional thing. There's nothing that we observe that we can observe completely detached. We always buy into it, and that's kind of almost phenomenology. What we see, we interpret based on our experiences. So if we see chaos, then we understand chaos in our deep fibers of being.
And something that I think is very important in alchemy and also in occultism is that alchemy teaches you not to control nature for your own favor, but the task is actually to reproduce the processes of nature. You're trying to make a plant go through a natural process. You're not trying to so you're not over nature, bigger than nature, so you control it like you want, because this is big also in like paganism too. You're not there to control nature and to make it do something that you want. You're there to experience a process and to try to emulate the natural process of things. So you let things happen and you learn from the processes. And the process that the plant goes through is a process that you are going through too. So I experience a lot in my alchemy courses. I experience that people get stagnated in certain processes with their plants. And that tells a lot about the person. Some people start with the dissolution, putting a plant in alcohol, and that stays there, and they never continue with the rest of the steps. So, and obviously we teach from alchemy that all these processes have some meaning, right?
Yeah, and like it reminds me of our kind of key word from our yesterday's chat of facilitation. We facilitate things. Like the plants can facilitate healing and can facilitate processes, and it's it's the same in magic if we're talking about kind of witchcraft and magic. Plants can facilitate things. They don't make things happen. I don't want to swear, so I'm avoiding like the swear words. But they don't control something. They don't exert a will over. They facilitate that process. And the people that have been kind of using magic and witchcraft for quite a long time always kind of like, if it is in the physical possibility of that happening, like i.e. I want a job tomorrow, if you are applying for jobs and doing that, then we can facilitate that with magic, and we can facilitate that with a herbal spell or an incense. But if it's not happening, then we can't just make it happen.
Process yourself.
Yeah. And that's involved. That interesting mirroring that you were talking about, like we do that within ourselves in terms of health. We facilitate ourselves back to health, and we do that in terms of plants when we're working with them by facilitating them to evolve in the kind of position that we want. And whether that's an alchemical thing where it's quite obvious of, here is the herb in its raw state and this is its alchemical exalted state. But we also do it in terms of anything that we do. So, here's the raw herbs, this is an incense at the end, and we're facilitating it to kind of get into that state and work for our purpose. And even if you cook at home in your kitchen, these are the raw ingredients, and this is the facilitated state that I want to get it into. That is nutritional, healthy, and yummy, delicious. So we're always doing that. We're always facilitating processes. We're not exerting our control.
Yeah, and I think the magic of herbs is actually that they give us the possibility of understanding. This is why when you are in an environment, you are outside in a forest, etc., you feel this cleanse, because it connects you to the nature and the nature that we are part of. So I think the plants facilitate you to reconnect with that natural state.
Yeah, but also the process. It's not even just the plants themselves, but like in the actual processes of alchemy. And you'll pause a little bit, but I'm going to carry on. Even in that process of working with the herbs in kind of creating tinctures and stuff, that helps us connect too. So it's just as much the process of kind of creating a tincture that helps us connect to that plant and helps us connect to something external from us.
Yeah, and absolutely, like we were saying yesterday, is the magic, I think, is summed up in that phrase, that alchemical phrase of as above, so below, and as within, so is outside. Because you help the plant go through a process of purification, but then when you take that elixir, that plant is now the alchemist that goes inside of your inner lab into your system and starts making a medicine of you, of this human, right? And I believe that was my experience in my 2 years studying alchemy. Most of the times I didn't know what I was doing, at the beginning, but I could feel that I was going through a transformative process.
Yeah.
And that is the magic that it's so difficult to grasp, right? It's so difficult to reproduce, because you have to be really in a meditative state to capture that and to understand that process. So ultimately, the process with plants and the process of alchemy is about becoming a medicine. Instead of needing a medicine, it's becoming a medicine and being a medicine to others as a human being, That's basically the definition of an elixir. Elixir is something that expands and heals, like the sun, that solar energy that just sort of gives life. Doesn't take anything, in exchange. So, and it's, I think it's related with what I was talking at the beginning of trying to make that light, that flame in the center of the spirit of this person grow big.
So in a nutshell, to sum up, just in case we kind of get kicked off in a few seconds, that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. So we've got about 4 or 5 episodes of looking at some of the principles going on behind the plants, which can be applied to ourselves. So when we're talking about 4 elements next time, we're talking about the 4 elements in all of nature. So we're talking about the 4 elements inside of ourselves and inside of plants. So we're kind of having that kind of discussion in 4 different ways. So things that can be applied to the self, but also things that are present in herbs. And that's the mirroring that you were talking about, that things that are happening in the external world that are also happening on the internal world, and how we can change the external world to change things internally, and how we can change internal things to change the external in that fun way that Hermetics talks about. So we've got those sessions. After every single one of these sessions, we've created a kind of a fun little handout picture that'll come out the day after on my feed, and I think the day after on your feed. Yes, so we've got one coming out tomorrow that is on the kind of the energies or uses of several plants that you may have laying around your home. And it does have elements on it, and I know that we've not talked about 4 elements today, but that'll make more sense after you see next time in 2 weeks, when we'll kind of talk about that. And they're kind of symbols on that. They're kind of like the triangular symbols. But we'll talk about that next time. So the more you watch us, the more you'll understand about what the hell we're posting.
Exactly. It's like a mini course that we decided to take the first step with the elements, because it's a language that most of us know, but maybe we don't know to what extent they apply and on how many different medicinal currents the elements. So that's the idea: exploring the elements of the different medicinal currents.
Yeah, exactly.
The next episode is Friday the 16th, is it?
Yeah, that's, I think, 14 days. 2 weeks. So 2 weeks. Fridays 5:30-ish. We may be a little bit late like we were today. But yeah, it's just part of the fun, casual nature of, just sitting around drinking tea and watching candles go up in flames.
And having internet problems.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed we don't have any more of those. But
and we hope to see you next time. And if you have questions, you can comment on these videos, and we will try to reply them on the next session. So we can all learn together.
Yep. And always feel free to shout out questions. We are going to try and kind of keep with the flow of the session, but if it's relevant and we think it's a really good question to answer there and then, we'll do it live in the feed.
Absolutely. Well, then we're getting ready for the next one. I'm already excited.
I know. We are talking about the 4 Greek elements next time, aren't we? So we're doing elemental theory, which would probably touch on humours, which was part of medicine until the 1800s. Crazy. So it's only over the last 200 years we've not used what we're going to be teaching next time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Next time you can come with a little notebook to take some notes.
Yes, definitely. Bring notebooks and everything else. It'll be a good laugh. If nothing else, we'll slowly see Luciana's house burn down with the amount of candles. I might even dress as an element next time. Like,
either way, we have some practices too. We're going to do some practice exercises in the future, but it's not the next one, but the next one. So we're going to announce that next.
There's 2 practical sessions, so we're going to be doing a meditation-y path working.
Alchemical meditation,
And we've also got a tarot spread that we've developed for kind of almost elemental diagnosis kind of stuff.
That's going to be cool.
Footnote, we are not doctors. We are not. I trained in psychotherapy, but we are not diagnosing people. It is just about self-learning in a kind of a holistic way. So this is not, don't go and see a doctor. This is, go and see a doctor, but this is also what you can do at home. Yeah, just to kind of quickly put that note in there. So we've got a specially designed tarot spread for elements, which combines kind of like a basic level, but also kind of more advanced levels. So we're going to be demonstrating that on one of them.
Yeah. So hope to see you guys next time. Thank you so much for the ones who joined.
Yes, thank you all so much, and hope to see you in 2 weeks where we're doing elements and talking about crazy things. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, it was lovely seeing you once again. I'm sure I'll talk to you in a bit, but thank you so much for hosting these and kind of getting us to all do them.
Yes, that's great.
All right. Ta-ra then. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.